Hey, welcome to Book Crew. My name is Dirk Hooper, and I am joined, as always, by author and editor Beth A Freely. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you, Dirk?
I am digging that music there.
I know it's kind of groovy, ain't it?
It is groovy. It makes I got kind of the disco lights going on in here in my background, and you got the music playing. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
For those who follow Task Force Geek, it's been a while since we've done anything like this, and this is officially a Task Force Geek branded outfit here for Book Crew. And life catches up with you, and a lot of things happen. But I've kept in touch with Beth, and both of us have a lot of book related things that are happening, and something in particular that we did together. And I thought, it's time to bring this thing back.
It's time.
Yeah. So to get everyone kind of caught up with kind of what you're doing, because a lot's gone on. Tell us a little bit about moving and what's happening with you, where you're at.
Wow. Since the last time I talked to you guys with either a Task Force Geek podcast or a Book Crew podcast, I have gone from living in Texas to living in a little town called Hope, New Mexico. Population of 113 if you count the cats. You can sneeze through town. We have a village building and a post office, and that's it. That's it. You just buzz right through town.
You're kind of close to Roswell, right?
I'm an hour outside of Roswell. One of my favorite places to go. We are actually an hour outside of Carlsbad, New Mexico, which is known for its caverns.
Yes.
And then an hour outside of Roswell. Yep. Right smack dab in between. So cool. It's a run either direction.
What do you think about New Mexico?
I love it. I absolutely love it out here. Hope is similar to the area that I grew up in upstate New York as far as the rural part of it. And then, it's a 20-minute drive into town. The closest town is a little town called Artesia, which reminds me of Highland Mills, New York, and Central Valley, where I grew up as a kid. And it's not that bad a drive. It's very rural, very desert. On a good day, when you're driving from Artesia back, west back to Hope, there's a mountain range that you can see because we were actually at the southern tip of the Rockies. There is one mountain range that you can see that's called Sierra Blanco, which has snow at the top of it all year round. And on a beautiful crystal clear day, you can see it plain as day. And mind you, this is a mountain range that's about an hour and a half away from us.
Wow.
So the scenery is gorgeous. If you keep going west, you head up into Cloudcroft, New Mexico, where you climb up to about 6,000 to 8,000 feet, and you climb into pine forest. So it's around us is desert, but hour and a half away, I'm back in my mountains, back up in the forest, which is great. So I absolutely love it. Like I said, an hour away is Roswell, land of the aliens. And Roswell is a fun town. It's absolutely adorable, and I love Roswell. And then about 2 hours away from here up in the mountains is Ruidoso. Ruidoso is another, it's a very much a tourist town, but it also is well known for its horse racing. It has Ruidoso Downs, which is a horse racing track, which a gentleman that I became friends with this year, who's part of the Elks Lodge here in Artesia, invited Dan and I to go to the races with him. In the jockey club, which we had an absolute blast watching that. And I actually learned a lot, which is good because one of my New Mexico Nights series books will take place at Ruidoso Downs.
Cool.
So that's been the craziness of moving. And then over the last year, I hit 7 major book signings and released 5 books.
Right. And I mean, I just
an anthology piece still left to write for this year.
Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, because I'm going to ask for kind of your history, but as an author, but I just before I was getting ready for this this broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
So I go to Amazon, and I'm pulling some books down, some pictures and stuff, and I'll show those. I only have a few, but and like I go to your page, and like the last time I looked, you had about let's call it a handful of
A
books
handful.
that you had done, and then like you have like 1,004 books that you've done, and then you have 10,080 that are coming. Like also, apparently, Amazon allows you to like place hold
Yeah,
for books,
it's pre-orders,
which is
they're
pretty
pre-orders.
fascinating, and
Yeah.
it makes me think, should I be doing that? And I'm thinking, yes, I should. Definitely, I should be place holding a few books. So anyway, you've been busy. There's no doubt about it. And we talked a little bit before this thing, and there's no doubt that you moving out there has been great.
Oh yeah,
for your level of productivity, no doubt about it.
it has
And
been. It has been.
I think maybe at some point we should speak about that as well. But let's go ahead, and if you would, let's go all the way back to maybe the early 2000s or maybe before then, and talk about kind of what your path has been, and hit on the major roadblocks up to till yesterday.
Wow, the path started in well, if you really want the history, the path started in 1977 with a little movie called Star Wars. That little movie sparked the imagination of 6-year-old me, who used to run around her acre and ate the land in upstate New York, fighting against stormtroopers, and by the time I was 8, I was typing out stories on my grandmother's typewriter. And it just, third grade is the first publishing credit, to be honest. A little children's book called Topaz and His Adventure, which I won my third grade writing contest with. That
cool.
book. Yeah. And it was bound and put in the school library, and it was there for years until we consolidated the schools. I don't know whatever happened to the copy of that at the elementary school. Somewhere in my files, I have the original, manuscript. So if I ever find it, I'll probably go ahead and actually publish it.
Yeah.
But from there, it was, I never had, I always liked to write. I was always writing. And I never had any thoughts of publishing until about 2003, with some friends, of mine, convinced me to post online some fan fiction stories based around a television show called Farscape, which I did, and I started winning awards for it. And then
your inspiration is surprisingly similar to my own.
And man,
both of what you've mentioned were big for me, very big.
Throw a Highlander fanfic in there, Steve Shank, if you're watching, that one's for you.
He better be watching.
As soon as this goes online, he'll be like, yes, and he'll go watch it.
No one else watches it. I expect him to.
Steve will be the one that watches it. Stephen Wall. There's our boys right there, right. Stephen Wall.
Right.
But, I wrote fan fiction for years until finally someone, out of the whole crew, the Farscape crew, sent me a link to a publishing contest, which I entered with my novel Behind the Eyes of Dorian Gray, and won. And I won my publishing contract, and I was with that publisher from 2005 through 2019 when they closed. And after 2019, when they closed at the end of 2019, I said, well, do I want to go pitch out, or do I just want to go ahead and self-publish?
How about that?
Yes. Oh, that is beautiful.
There's Behind the Eyes of Dorian Gray.
That's the 20th anniversary edition right there. And by going...
You won an award, right?
Yeah.
Or two?
I won the publishing contract for that. I won first place in women's fiction in the Arch Books publishing contract with
There you
Behind
go.
the Dorian Gray,
There you go.
which was 20 years ago.
How
Go
time
figure.
flies.
Time flies. And I was with that publisher until they closed in 2019. And instead of pitching out to other publishers and everything, I just decided to go self-published. I was doing all of it anyway. I was doing all of the marketing for my own books. I was scheduling my own book signings, so I just went ahead and went self-published, and it was the best thing I ever did because I've gotten more traction with sales of my books and visibility. And I was able to produce a audio version of Behind the Eyes of Dorian Gray, as read by Max Brown, which, for those of you who are interested, you can find that interview that Dirk and I did with Max on my website. And I've just kept on rolling since.
He's a really cool dude.
Max is a sweetheart. He's an absolute sweetheart. And we still keep in touch. We keep in touch and everything. So every time a new season of Sister Boniface Mysteries comes out, I usually get a text message from, "Did you know the new season's out yet?" No, but I do now. Thank you.
That's right.
But yeah, so I went from having 2 published novels in 2020 to now having a total of 9 full-length novels and 4 novellas and 1 short story published.
Amazing. Yeah. Amazing. And how many over the last 2 years?
Well, over the last year, 5. This year alone, I've done 5 books.
Yeah. And I mean,
last year was kind of hard to get any done because of the move.
Sure.
So that was the roadblock.
You said you're still unpacking. I'm
still unpacking. You don't want to see the one corner of my office because there's still stuff, that I'm trying to get through. I don't even have my Avenger stuff hung up in my office yet, and that's killing me.
Oh, I have something for you, by the way.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
On that thought, on the Avengers thought.
You're going to make me wait to find out what it is.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. And then you can show it to people once you get it. What do you got there?
My Captain America Bucky tumbler.
Oh, very cool.
That a friend of mine,
of course,
a friend of mine made me.
Of course, the Bucky tumbler. Let's hit on another one of your books, one of your 1,040 books that you. Beyond the Steps of Stone. That was
that is my baby. That's one of my babies. Yep.
I would say that's and I may be wrong. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But after Dorian Gray, that's probably your next best-selling book. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Yes, okay. It is. And that's my other award winner. I took first place in sci-fi romance and second place in sci-fi aliens and alien invasions at the 2022 Spring Book Fest with that book.
Those graphics look great.
I actually found the same cover models for books 2 and 3. So I actually have the covers. They're already done. The same cover artist did them for me, and they look fantastic.
Where are you at on that?
Book 2 is about half. The first draft is about halfway done. Book 3 I have outlined, and that's about it. Book 2 of Beyond the Steps of Stone and Book 2 of The Legend of Captain St. Pierre are planned for next year. Cool. Amid the other 10 million I'm planning on writing.
Lord, yes. My God.
I joined a bunch of shared worlds that
I noticed that,
and
I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. But anyway, let me go into my thing a little bit. I don't have as much history there. I can say definitively that my desire to do writing and do art also came from Star Wars. Some people wanted to be Han Solo or they wanted to be Luke Skywalker. I wanted to be George Lucas. You know,
Yes, yes.
I saw that he created this really great world, and it's like, holy cats, I want to do this too.
Mhm.
And I think it was around third grade that I wrote a story. It didn't go well, but it was basically it was a knockoff of the Time Machine.
Oh, nice. H.G. Wells is the Time
And
Machine?
yes,
Yes.
and you know, so even and it was around, I'm going to say second or third grade that I tried it. And what I discovered from that is that I'm not a pantser. I really need an outline to bring my work together. I really desperately need that. Um, Also very into Farscape, which is funny
Oh,
that you
yeah.
should mention that. As a matter of fact, they just announced that Comcast is going to be selling the Sci-Fi Network,
Oh, wow, okay.
among everything else, all of their
Mhm.
cable, MSNBC, whatever it is that they have, they're going to be dumping all of those. And I said, I wish I had the money
Yeah.
to buy Sci-Fi so I could
Oh,
bring Farscape
yeah.
back. You know, among other things. There's other
Oh,
things on there I'd very much like,
I'd love to see Farscape come back.
for sure. I mean, why isn't that bad? I mean, you could actually have the old crew and they could have a younger
I
crowd, you
want a
know.
rewrite of the 4th season. The 4th season in my head should never have happened. Anyone who's read the Crace Langtree Chronicles that I wrote, no, they turned around. They're like, no, 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 this is the 4th season we want.
That's funny. You know, maybe someday. I have no idea why Farscape isn't on television right now.
And here's the funny thing is we both write romance novels. And I've had a lot of people ask me, you know, why haven't you done just straight sci-fi? But anyone who's read Beyond the Steps of Stone knows it's more sci-fi than romance.
Yeah.
So every and I've always said this, every story has an element of romance in it. Star Wars
Sure.
did.
Yeah, sure.
We just won't talk about that. It's between Luke and Leia.
Romance is you know, it's hot. It's hot right now. I mean,
It's there, yeah.
that's the specific reason why I chose it, because it seemed like it was that there was an audience out there, like people who read books read romance.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
And it's not just, you know, over the years I've discovered that romance novels, which have primarily been marketed to women, is not just a woman's genre anymore. You know,
No, because
quite a few people.
again, I do a lot of marketing and branding, and so I think incessantly about genres and how to promote things and that sort of stuff. And I went a little bit down the rabbit hole one time about and found a subreddit that was specifically romance novels for men. And it's like, what? They've got a, I mean, like I get on there and it's like, there's a lot of men on this thing. And it led me to a bunch of books that I didn't even know existed that apparently are also doing pretty good. And it made me kind of think about who I was marketing to, and maybe some stuff that I would like to do in the future that's specifically designed for men who read romance, because apparently there's a lot of them out there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And, you know, they're doing, not that women can't read fiction that's, you know, primarily designed for men, or the other direction.
You know, growing up, we, you know, as Gen Xers, we're probably the ones that broke that mold as far as women reading sci-fi. For the longest time, sci-fi was always geared towards men. And I really believe it's our generation. We're the ones that broke the mold and started reading, you know, Ray Bradbury and H.G. Wells and Heinlein and Asimov, you know, especially as a woman reading them. I don't know very many of my contemporaries, you know, very many of my peers from high school or junior high that read Tolkien, you know, that were female.
Right.
You know, when I was reading Tolkien, I mean, I was reading Tolkien at 8 or 9 years old, and we broke that. Our generation kind of broke that mold,
for sure,
and have crossed those lines.
I just watched a video today that was talking about how fantasy has been kind of taken over by the romance genre.
Romantasy
And
is what they call it now. Yeah.
yes, and it's predominantly geared towards women,
Mhm.
and they have book covers that look not like typical fantasy books, but look more like romance novels. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Because they're geared toward that. But I mean, it works well with it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the younger crowd in particular, and you're right, it started with us. Women found sci-fi and fantasy, they found genre fiction. And so, why not put the romance in there? And,
Yeah. I mean, look at Dune, Frank Herbert's Dune. Okay, you can't get much more sci-fi than Frank Herbert's Dune, and yet there's the relationship between Paul Atreides and Chani. And while it's subtle, it's still there. It really is still there.
Oh, and it's kind of in most books, really. I mean, it's not in all books. I read a book. Sean Wilson suggested this book, The Forever War. It was written right after Vietnam, or maybe even during the Vietnam War. And it's about as straight up sci-fi as you can get. I mean, it's basically the premise of this thing is the people who are fighting this in this war are affected by the time dilation that happens when you approach the speed of light. So when they go away, they come back and it's 200 years later.
Yeah.
And that keeps happening. So over the course of the book, it becomes like thousands of years where, the main character is only aged like 5 years, but the earth is aged 1,000 years. And it is, as you say, science fiction as you can get, but he falls in love with this girl, and the big moment in the book is that he's going to be separated from this girl. She's going to go to another ship, and because that's going to happen, he'll never see her again.
Yep.
Because his ship will be, grossly misaligned with everything. She'll be dead by the time he sees her again.
Yep.
And I won't tell you how it ends, but it has it's a romantic book ending, and it's very much, it's what gave the book the purpose, because otherwise, he lost his parents, he lost his friends. The only person he had left was this other fellow warrior who he fell in love with. Yeah. And so it gives the book like its whole purpose and stuff. And, that's romance.
That's romance. That's it in a nutshell. So, yeah.
Yeah. So let me get back to my thing, and then
get back to your thing. Go for it.
And then we can talk. What you don't know is that Beth and I can talk about horseshit for
hours.
For hours. Yeah, for sure. So, look, during the 90s, speaking as a writer, I wrote several comics that were published and several full-length comics that were not published, unfortunately, that I'm still sitting on those stories.
Time to dust those off, Dirk.
Yeah. I mean, I could do them, but again, with comics, I'm left with the same issue of either I have to draw them or I have to find someone to draw them.
Yeah.
And it's not always easy to get someone to draw a full-length comic. But I did that at the time. I also did editing at that time. Then let's fast forward to about 5 years ago. Something that I worked on since about 2013 is an erotic novel. Mm-hmm. Published it. It did quite well. And then life happened, and I didn't have another book for 5 years. The book that I wrote is here. It's Dominatrix Boss.
It's a good book.
Thank you.
It's a very good book.
This is the revised edition. This is the second edition of this thing. What people need to know I guess besides the fact that I wrote it, is that I did everything on this. I did the cover, I did the layout of the book, I did the publishing, I did the promotion, I did the editing on it. I did literally everything on this book. And so I have an exceptional amount, and I've done it twice now. So I have an exceptional amount of experience with literally every aspect of the book, from concept to writing it, to rewriting it, to editing it, to, designing it and publishing it.
I think the only thing I don't do that you do is the cover art.
And that's really what's holding up the next book, because I have locked the sequel to that book. And the only thing that I'm waiting on at this point is for me to do the cover. And it's going to have 3 figures on it. It's going to be about a week-long project, and I just haven't had the time. But as soon as I have the time, then I'm going to be doing I'll be doing the sequel to that. It is done. So maybe that'll come out in the next, let's say we're in November. Let's say that possibly in about mid-December. And if that doesn't happen, then I'll just hold off and maybe either put it out in January or February.
There you go. Yeah, because I'm waiting for that one.
That one's, I know. Well, I literally get, that's written under a pen name, by the way, but it's the worst kept secret ever. I specifically, and this is another subject for maybe another time, but I specifically chose to do it under a pen name for a lot of different reasons, mostly for marketing reasons, because I have other books that I want to do, and that's an erotic book, and the other books that I want to do are science fiction and fantasy type stuff. Somewhere down, depending on how the second book does. Like if the book comes in and it does better than the first book, then I'll go immediately into writing the third book, which is what they say you should do.
Oh yeah.
Then I'll have a trilogy out there, and I specifically went back and changed things. I said it's the Dominatrix Boss is a revised edition. I added things in there specifically for the purpose of expanding my world from the very beginning. So I could literally write a series of those books and keep them going almost forever. With the characters in the world that I've built. If it comes in about the same, then I'm going to be in the same genre, but I'm going to switch. Instead of female dominatrix, male submissive, I'm going to go male dom and female submissive. In the same world. As a matter of fact, they're mentioned in the sequel, the characters.
That makes it up.
Because I know for a fact that there is a huge market out there for that after 50 Shades of Grey. A lot of people who are very interested in male dom erotica. If it doesn't do well at all, if the book doesn't do well at all, then I will write either. I have a steampunk horror fantasy Western about a female demon hunter, or I have a cyberpunk conspiracy spy novel, and I will do that. Either one of those.
I want them both.
I'm really ready to go on both of them. I have. All I need is time. All I need is time on it.
Oh, ain't that the truth?
The steampunk Western is based on a comic book character that I've had since 1995, and was published in Rough Cut issue 2. And I'm also working on some short stories to put a comic anthology out on that character. And then the second deal is actually based on I had a modeling group that me and my friend Robert Henry ran back in the late 2000s. And because both of us were comic book guys, we thought it would be fun to do a comic book based around the different models that we had,
Yep.
And I created a character for that, and it occurred to me that we put Robert and me in the book as well. The character's based around me, but I thought that it would be fun to, because I have a story for that as well, and it's set in modern times. But I thought it would be fun to go back to 1995 and write kind of weird cyberpunk fantasy James Bond novels
So
with my character.
it's kind of like, it's kind of like the Back to the Future thing, where Marty McFly jumped from 1986 to what was it, 19? In the first one, it was
It was in the 50s.
It was in the 50s.
Like 56 is 30 years earlier.
Yeah, and then the second one was like
30 years later.
So
it was actually, I think it was actually like about 2 or 3 years ago that they jumped.
Where's our hoverboards?
Yeah, we didn't. They promise us a lot that we don't have.
They promise us a lot of things we don't have it yet.
So anyway, I have a lot of projects that are coming out, but speaking for novels, I have one that's cocked and loaded. I just need to get it out the door,
Literally.
I just need to get that out the door.
You lobbed that one up there. Sorry, you did.
And again, I'm going to be going through I will have done everything on that and published it through Kindle and Amazon as both an ebook and a physical book. So there's kind of my background as far as writing and editing and such.
Dirk and I will keep you all reading. Trust me. We will keep you guys busy.
Yeah, reading. I mean, I'm not going to be doing the 10,000 books that Beth is doing. I wish I was. Look, the long-term plan was to get, have you ever heard of, and this is another subject that we could talk about, 20 books to 50K?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So the general idea is, if you can write 20 books that are on genre and kind of in the same deal, and you can, release them relatively quickly, that you can make $50,000 a year. That's the idea. Some people make more money, some people make less. The plan doesn't make you a great author, but the idea is that if you have enough content out there, that at some point you will be able to make enough money to make the switch to being a full-time author.
Yep.
And that's my long-term goal.
That's my long-term goal too. Yeah.
To be to the point where what probably most people think, I would love to be able to do this full time. And so, I'll be 2 books down to 20, hopefully by the end of this year, maybe early next year. And
heck, I'm almost halfway there. That's a scary thought.
There you go.
That's a scary thought.
Yeah. But, hopefully it clicks, that's the idea. And like I told Beth, I'm sitting here over the past 6 months, I've gone through all these revisions and all of this stuff with this book, had a lot of questions and had a lot of things that I wanted to discuss with authors, should have been doing a podcast during that time, and throwing that stuff out there and having a discussion about it. Because if I'm going through it, then I imagine that there are another, several thousand people that are going through the exact same thing, which is kind of, hopefully why we're doing this. So I just want to kind of cover you. We've heard from both of us now. Mm-hmm. Here's my thought about Book Crew. Here's kind of what I would like to do. Obviously, I want to talk about our own projects.
Obviously.
To get it out there.
That was not what Book Crew was originally designed to be for, though.
Sure.
Crew was originally was the our brainchild to bring information and help other authors. So that's where we want to go with it now.
Yeah. So we've talked a little bit about this. We'd like to do interviews with other authors, whether they're promoting their own stuff or, maybe a round table where we pick a subject and we go, what's your writing process and that sort of stuff.
I
Or
know a couple of marketing professionals we could bring on as well to
yeah,
help talk about different marketing ideas.
you
Heck,
mentioned a cover model,
cover models.
audiobook, which we're going to be talking about here in a
Yes.
minute. There's a lot of elements there. And then other things, editing, writing process, characters, marketing, whether to go wide, and a million other things that authors have to deal with. We can get very detailed about stuff, take an hour and talk about one specific thing. I know that I listen to a lot of podcasts, and it doesn't seem like there are a lot of people that are getting kind of into the weeds on stuff.
And that's where we want to go.
Yeah, we'd very much like to do that. And if you're listening to this and you're like, hey, I'm an author, I would like to be interviewed, I'd like to be part of it, get in touch with us.
Yeah, please get in touch with us. Easy enough.
We'll have a few places for you to get in touch with us and stuff. All right, well, that's the longest introduction ever in the history of God and Net.
Well, no. To be fair, we're just kind of revamping here and reminding everybody who we are. It's been a while.
It has. What the impetus was for us to get this ball rolling again is that Beth wrote a book called The Dirty Professor, or Dirty Professor.
Dirty Professor.
I always want to put the in front of it.
I do too.
So first off, I'm going to put this up right here and show you the book, and then I'm going to invite Beth to tell us a little bit about the book, please. Give me the elevator pitch.
The elevator pitch. Dirty Professor is about college professor Ivan Petrov, who has stolen his coworker's time slot for his Russian literature class. And when she comes back off of vacation and finds out what he did, she confronts him. And he says, I bet you I can prove to you that Russian literature is both erotic and sensual in the 2 weeks we have before college starts. So she takes that bet. Does he succeed? Well, you have to read the book to find that out.
Right.
It's part of the Tainted Professors series.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask about that in a minute. Let me ask you, because for those of you who don't know, and I mean, this might be a great selling point. There's a lot of Russian literature in this book. The male lead is Russian. And the bet is about whether Russian literature is erotic or not. And so there's a lot of...
She says it's dark and dreary and depressing. And he says, no, it's very erotic and sensual.
Yeah. So I have to ask, what was the research like on this book? Because
enjoyable. I'm going to start with that word.
What is your background in Russian literature, and how did you find? Because there's a lot, it's just passages, but there's a lot. If you're into Russian literature, there's a lot of it in this book.
I am a huge Russian lit fan. For the longest time, I couldn't figure out where my fascination with Russian literature came from until I had a conversation with my sister, and she said, well, Dad loved Russian literature, loved Russian music. She goes, you probably got it off of him. Although,
really?
Yeah. So my background includes Czechoslovakian, and my brother has done some research where we're questioning whether it was truly Czech or if it was possibly Austrian. But either way, we have roots in that part of the world. And, there's possibilities that somewhere in the family line we had Romney Gypsy. Because if you ever, get to see photos of my dad was very tall, dark, curly hair.
Okay.
And compared to his brothers and sisters who were light haired and, blondish light hair, blue eyes. Dad was dark,
Hmm.
dark hair. He'd go to Brazil and come back, with a tan that made people think he could possibly be Mexican. Because he had that kind of skin tone. So,
Yeah.
I grew up listening to Tchaikovsky with my dad,
Okay.
Tchaikovsky, Rimsky-Korsakov, and while I never actually saw my dad reading any Russian literature, I'm sure he probably did. And, I was, my parents influenced all of us kids with our love of reading, our love of music. I mean, all three of us have varied reading and musical tastes across the board. But I think my sister was right. I think I probably, gained
You
that,
absorbed some of that.
yeah, from being exposed, from a young age to a lot of this, the Russian literature and everything. I mean, I'm still a huge fan of watching the Nutcracker every year, and so I got into reading Russian literature on my own in high school. We read Uncle Vanya by Chekhov in one of my English classes, and I remember falling in love with Chekhov's style of writing, and so I started looking into more. I got into Tolstoy and Dostoevsky and all of them, and I actually have copies of a lot of the stuff that I used in The Dirty Professor here. I actually have physical paperbacks that I reference back to. I remember my mom reading Anna Karenina. Karen, I can
Karenina.
never say it. Yeah, I remember mom reading that book. I remember. You know what? I do remember my dad reading a Russian book because I remember at one point he had Crime and Punishment. So yeah, um, but I have a lot of that. I mean, one of my favorite books is The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. Um, you know, so when I got the idea to write The Dirty Professor, I was like, oh, okay, I could take my love of Russian literature and
Yeah.
actually do something with it.
Great.
When I was going for my master's degree, they had a Russian lit class
Oh,
at Southern New Hampshire University. It
okay.
was the only lit class they didn't offer online,
Wow.
which really bummed me out. But I got a copy of the my counselor at SNHU was nice enough to send me a copy of basically the what the reading material for
Curricular or
my
whatever.
class
Yeah.
was. Yeah, what the curricular was, and I just went in and I absorbed as much as I could.
That's very cool. Yeah, that's very cool. Well, I mean, I have to say, if you're into Russian literature, you're going to love this book.
The only book I've ever put a resources section at the end.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Because there's a lot of stuff in there.
Mm-hmm.
How long did it take you to write the book?
Once I got all the research done, it took me a month to write it. It was one of those books that just flowed. I knew exactly where I wanted to go with it, what I wanted to do, how I wanted the story to lay out. So I actually, I've noticed over the last year or so that if I actually sit down and write an outline, I can write the book a lot faster. I am typically a pantser. But I've started taking the time to actually outline my books now, and it's made it a little
Really? That's
easier.
different.
Yeah, yeah.
T- tell me,
I hate outlining. I
tell
hate
me
outlining.
about that. What made you decide you wanted to outline? Because we've
Um,
had this discussion before,
yeah,
and
we've had this discussion.
you were a avid pantser,
Avid pantser. I
and
think it
I
was
am
just
an
a
avid
matter of,
outliner. I'm like an insane outliner.
yeah. It came down to the fact that I had joined these different shared world series books, and in order for me, what wound up actually happening was I had two come out back to back. Literally, I had two come out in the span of 2 months. And the only way I was going to be able to write those books and stay on track was by actually sitting down and coming up with an outline,
Saves time.
sticking to my outline and saving time. And when I sat down and actually did that, I was like, okay, all right. As much as I hate outlining, and I hate outlining, I sat down and I forced myself to do it. And now I can actually pull an outline together in the course of 2 hours.
What is it that you hate about outlining?
I always hated the process. I just hated the process of sitting there and just, pretty much pegging every little detail. I've always been one to allow my imagination to just go with it. But after sitting down and doing the outline for The Perfect Mix, which was the first of the Shared World series books I put out this year, I realized, let your imagination go into the story. The outline doesn't have to be a complicated outline. Hit the plot points and stick to them. And that has actually been a saving grace for me this year, is sitting down and outlining. So I guess you could say I'm a plantster, or
and a lot of people do that.
Yeah, where you plot it out. You plot out the basics.
It's just a very like a skeletal outline.
Yeah, and that's really all I did, was just a skeletal outline. I wanted to make sure this happened here, and this happened here, and this happened here, and then I just built the stories around it. It really is a skeleton outline. It's nothing. Man, you remember the outlines we used to have to do in high school, where
yeah, they're brutal.
And I think my hatred of outlines started with that.
Right.
Especially going through college and having to do outlines for the bachelor's degree and for my master's. Outlines are just evil to me. But in this case, I'm starting to accept them, and that's how I managed to get 5 books out this year.
I heard from an author just a few days ago that said that she likes to pants through a novel because she doesn't know how the story is going to end. Mm-hmm. And it propels her forward to write to get to that ending, because she wants to know, it's part of her motivation to keep writing, so that she can find out what the end of it is, just like everyone else. It's her reason for writing is to come up with this story and then figure out the end.
The weird thing for me is I'm the exact opposite. I will write the ending first.
I've heard people say that too.
Yeah, The Lock, actually, that book came out of a scene that I got stuck in my head after listening to Richard Armitage recite a poem. And, I listened to this audiobook, and then I was tootling around in town, and I had on the radio, and Maroon 5's Unkiss Me came on, and I was like, because all of a sudden I'm seeing the ending of The Lock in my head. I hadn't even decided to write the book. I had the ending. I knew how it was going to end. So I actually kind of wrote that book slightly backwards. I wrote that last chapter first, and then went back and wrote everything that led up to it. Yep. So I usually know how my books are going to end. And I used to love pantsing, being a pantster for that exact same reason. But I always know how my books are going to end. I always know my ending first. So, right. I have to find a different motivation to get there.
I've also heard, I read a book called Right from the Middle. Mm-hmm. And the idea from that author, and I wish I could remember his name. I think it's James Bell. Maybe wrong. In any case, the basic idea is that you take the mirror moment at the very middle of the book, mm-hmm. where the main character looks into the mirror and goes, what the hell am I doing? Who am I? What's going on here? That moment where, things are not going so great, and they're trying to figure out, what is my purpose in life, and what am I going to do next, and figure out what that point of the story is, and then from there, you know what decision that he or she makes.
Right.
And so you
Right.
can write the end of it. And then you can also write the beginning of the book,
Go back.
because everything up to that point is, leading to the mirror moment, which I
Yeah.
think is kind of an interesting way of writing the book too.
It is an interesting way. I've never tried it, but I have heard of a lot of people who have had good luck with it, and it makes sense. If you know what your culminating moment's going to be, then yeah, right around that culminating moment. That's the beauty of being an author. There's no right or wrong way to do this.
Oh no.
Yeah, I mean, and everybody's a little different, so that's the beauty of what we do.
It forces you to get into the character's head,
Yeah.
which makes for a good book.
Oh, yeah.
You want to be in the character's head. You want to know kind of where they're at and where they're going.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned, let me ask you, because I'm always interested in this. What's your process for writing the book? So how do you said that this time you did an outline for the book, which is a little different. And then do you start on chapter 1 and just start, pounding the thing out? Or
in most cases, yeah, I start at chapter 1 and pound everything out. There have been a few times where I will have a scene in my head and I have to get it out of my head. And so I'll figure out where that scene goes and just go write that chapter and throw it up and then move on, and then write around it. There have been times I had my sister-in-law was actually editing a draft for me of a novel I want to put out next year.
Cool.
And both her and my best friend Miriam have edited the first draft for me, and they're both like, you've got a scene you need to finish. And I'm like, oh, oops. Because sometimes if I get stuck,
you had like a placeholder.
I got a placeholder, write this scene. This is what happens here. And
interesting.
And apparently I forgot to write the scene.
You never.
But yeah, like if I get stuck in a scene, I'll throw up a placeholder and just keep on moving.
Yeah.
For me, the process is get the book out, get the book down, get it on paper. I mean, anybody who has seen my office knows I have more journals and notebooks than I know to do with. Get it on paper, get it on your computer. Don't worry about if it's beautiful enough. I follow now that I'm starting to use outlines more. I follow my outline and I just get it down, and then I go back and beautify it later.
You said get it down on paper. Do you write in your notebook? You write the book in a notebook?
I have been known to, yes.
Okay.
Do I have it?
There are a lot of great authors that do that.
I don't see it over here, but I actually have one that I started.
And then you
type it into the computer.
Yeah, so that becomes like your first edit, basically.
Yeah. I've got one here that I started in a notebook. It's laying on my desk here somewhere. That I started back in 2019. It was when I was out in Virginia helping pack up my mom's house. I brought the notebook with me, and I just didn't feel like pulling out the laptop.
Okay. Yeah.
And a lot of times I'll do that. I've started doing this thing with my best friend Miriam's got me doing this, is where we go in and we start decorating our journals. And it gives us something pretty to write in, and it makes it more fun to write in the journals.
Like a craft project. Yeah.
It just makes it more enjoyable to sit, when you open up your notebook and you've got something, nice to look at. It's just kind of a little more inspirational.
Yeah.
So I've started doing that too. And I've got one notebook that I have story prompts in. I've decorated and I've put story prompts up. Which in that notebook, I actually have one of the story prompts was to write a letter from one of your characters to another. And I wrote a letter from Iden, Essex to Bronwyn St. Pierre. that'll probably be in the second or third book.
Cool. Yeah.
So yeah, I still handwrite. And for those that wonder, I also use fountain pens.
Oh, wow. Really? Yeah. That's deep.
This is a throwback to my childhood and going to school in the schools in England.
Really?
So I've actually
they have you use a crow quill?
Yep, you use a fountain pen.
Oh, wow.
Matter of fact, I found this while going through some stuff. Is it this one? No. Is this it? Yeah. This was my fountain pen that I used in England.
Wow. Yeah.
This thing is over 30 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
It
wild.
needs cleaned badly before I can put any more ink in it. It needs cleaned.
Tell me about the series of books that you're in. How did you get involved in that, and what's the logistics of that?
So an author that I'm friends with, Ashley, and I mess up her name every time. So Ashley Z, she knows who she is. We've done a couple of different book signings and stuff together, and we've become friends over the years. And she threw up a notice saying, "Hey, I'm doing Shared World series. If you're interested, here are the covers. Pick one. Here's the buy-in." And basically, what we do is all of the shared series the ebooks are put out on KDP. They're exclusive to KDP. Then we put the paperbacks out anywhere we want. So because I am wide, with the exception of the Shared World series books, I publish my paperbacks out through Ingram Spark. But basically,
that answers a question for me, because your book version is not aligned with your ebook version.
No, I need to actually call Amazon and have them align that. I have to call them.
Sometimes it
aligns fine.
Why would it not just do that?
I don't know. It's the way they have their system set up. Sometimes it aligns fine. Sometimes it doesn't. I have to call them on this one and get them to do it. If
you can go, if you're listening to this, it doesn't matter. You're not going to be able to see the thing, but I've put up a link to the book. Let me say that if you are listening to this, or you just are going to go to Amazon to look for the thing, my advice is to put in Dirty Professor and Beth A Freely, because apparently there are a lot of professors out there who need a bath or something.
Yeah.
And there are books about them. And so if you want to get to the correct book, put in both Dirty Professor and Beth A Freely, and that'll take you to the right place. Or you can follow the link that I have here on the deal. But also know that you're going to, at least at the time, you have an ebook and audiobook, and then separately listed, there is a print version of the book. If you want to touch it and feel it and pass it through loins, then you're going to have to go to another deal.
Get your author to sign it,
Right. Yeah, right. For sure. Let's talk a little bit about the process of doing the audiobook, because that's the big surprise.
Big surprise.
Is that Beth asked me to do the audiobook version of the book. How did you come to that decision?
Man, you've been telling me
besides desperation.
No, you've been telling me for years, if you need me to read a book, let me know. I can do one. And I had 4 at the time that I needed narrators for, and 2 of which you got.
Right.
I knew with Sculpting Love, I wanted you to read Sculpting Love, because that book is my first male mail, and it's kind of very special to me, and I wanted to make sure the narrator on that book was, chef's kiss, and I knew you would do that job, 150%. And then for Dirty Professor, I was like, who can I get to read this book? And I'm like, oh no, there's only one person, that's Dirk. I knew you could do the accents, or at least try and do the accents. if you weren't able to do it, which when you guys listen to this, you're going to love it, because he does Ivan's Russian accent beautifully.
Thank you.
You did. When I first started listening to it, I was sitting there and I just went, and Dan was like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Hold on a minute." And I kept listening, and after I listened to it, I said, "Dirk did his accent." And he's like, "Dirk did whose accent?" I said, "Dirk did Ivan's accent in the book." But I've wanted to collaborate with you on a project for a while now, and I just never had the right one. And then I was like, you know what, Dirty Professor is going to be perfect. And I made it a point to go find you on ACX and offer you the contract, because I didn't want anybody else reading that book. I wanted you to do it. Same with Sculpting Love. And trust me, there'll be more down the pipeline that I'll get you to read for me.
I've done 4 audiobooks, but it's been a while.
Mm-hmm.
I did 2 books that were nonfiction, and for people who don't know, nonfiction is pretty easy because you're just reading the book.
Yep.
It's just straight up, you're reading the book word after word. There are moments where you want to have some emphasis, or put a little passion into things, particularly if the book leans into that. If it's not like, how to assemble your car engine or something. In both of the books that I narrated were kind of personal books and got into, kind of a little bit of storytelling. It's just, it doesn't have dialogue. But, a nonfiction book is pretty easy. The other 2 books that I did, ironically enough, were Russian mobster books.
I didn't realize those were Russian mobster books.
That were romance novels. And I'm from Moore, Oklahoma. Never been to Russia. I don't have, I don't have any background in that at all. And so at the time, and remember, this was 4 or 5 years ago, the first 2 books I did were Russian mobster books. And as a narrator, what you do is you try to find, like, usually you have a male lead and you have a female lead. Mm-hmm. And on those, ideally, you try to stick as close to your voice as possible on both of those leads, because you're going to be doing them constantly.
Yep.
In the case of the first Russian book, they're all first person. Both of the Russian books were in first person. So I can't just do the dialogue on the character. The dialogue, the actual narration of the book is supposed to be in this Russian dude's voice. And so instead of doing a Russian accent for the entire effing book, I did my voice, because I'd still be working on it, 5 years later, trying to do a Russian accent for the entire book. So in any case, let's just say that it wasn't those 2 books, and I'm happy with the way they came out. But some people wanted to hear the Russian dude speak Russian throughout the entire book, and I totally understand that. So some people were like, this guy doesn't sound Russian to me. Now, other people in his crew sounded Russian because I didn't have to do so damn many lines from them. And that ranges anywhere from, look, when you're doing, and I'm going to talk about one scene that I did for your book here in a minute. When you're doing these things, you have to realize that, you have to distinguish between each character. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult to tell who is talking right now. And I'm not Rich Little, I'm not an expert at, varying the different stuff. There are methods that you can use, and I'm learning them, and the more I do this, the better I'll get at it. But like with the Russian mobster things, I had some guys who had a heavy, heavy accent, and then other guys who had, lesser accents, and some of them spoke higher and some of them spoke lower, and some of them spoke faster and some slower. And
it's the difference between Colossus and Red Guardian.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And if you're just if you're an actor and you're just doing one thing, you can nail that one thing over and over again. They have the benefit of not having to come up with multiple accents and stuff. So anyway, in this case, I had a little bit of experience in doing a Russian accent. And at the time, what I did is I was watching Green Arrow, and he happened to be going up against the Russian mob. And so I had, like, every week, I had multiple people that I could kind of, base the thing on.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, Green Arrow's not on any longer, and I only had one guy. There's only one guy that I got to do Russian accent with. So again, I tried. What I did is I looked up online because I knew that there would be people who would be teaching this sort of thing, and I found a few different people who were teaching actors and narrators how to do Russian accents. And I wish that I had looked this up 5 years ago. That it might not have existed, but I found a woman who taught it and a man who taught it, and those things are what I use to come up with the accent this time. Yeah, the accent this time around. And the great thing about it is that I got to lean into one person's accent instead of multiple accents. And at a certain point, it became very almost second nature for me to do his accent. And hopefully this time around, it's a little bit more convincing than it was.
Oh,
it is.
Before. It is. That was one of the
perfect.
No,
it's not perfect. But I tried.
It's what I was looking for, though. I mean, and that was one of the other reasons why I wanted you to read it. I knew that if there was anything in there that you needed to look up to perfect, you would do the homework behind it. I've like I said, I've had three audiobooks come out since I started the process and asked you to do this. And the other auditions for the other two books that I listened to, I wasn't thrilled with them, and I have come to the conclusion that I am not a big fan of female narrators.
Really?
I don't know why. There's just something. The perfect mix I pitched out to female narrators, and I wound up going with a man again, because I just was not happy with how they did the voices, how they read the book. And so, I've started doing my own research behind listening to the samples for narrators now, instead of just putting out a blind audition. And, if they're not
approached them.
I approached them.
That's a neat idea.
At this point, if I'm not hearing what I want in a blind narration, I'm just going to go start looking for the narrators. And, like I said, I know you will do the research in the background, for the narration. That's why I was really comfortable with also asking you to read Sculpting Love for me. Because I know you'll go through and you'll read it and be like, okay, yeah, I have an idea of what I want to do here. The narration for Taming the Rancher's Daughter, I went through 4 narrators, listening to 4 different narrators, and listening, I sent them a very specific scene. And, if they didn't read it the way I wanted it, and if I asked them, this is what I'm looking for, can you try again? And they still didn't get it, I didn't use them. On that particular audiobook, I wound up going with a gentleman who actually is a ranch hand on a working ranch.
Cool. Yeah. Cool.
And while he has a deep, rugged cowboy voice, he made the female voice work, and when he read that specific scene, I was like, yep, there you go. That's what I'm looking for right there. So I knew as soon as you sent me, the initial 15 minutes and I heard Ivan's accent, I was like, yep, I know I made the right decision asking Dirk to do this. So yeah.
It's fun to do an accent if you can, whatever.
You pulled it off perfect. I loved it.
I have a little bit of a closeted actor in me, like I think it would be fun to act in stuff. And I mean, audiobook narration is, you get to act a lot of different parts.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so it can be fun if you enjoy that sort of thing. It can also be quite a challenge.
Yeah.
Depending on good God. I don't know who narrates Game of Thrones, but that would be an example of something with the 400 characters that thing has that I have to imagine is like insanely difficult to really nail that.
Probably one of the best narrations I've heard with a cast of characters, with a large cast of characters, is Andy Serkis's narration of The Hobbit.
That's interesting. That guy is one of the best actors out there. So that's interesting. I would like to hear that just to hear him.
He's such a chameleon too, but his narration is excellent on that.
That's fascinating. I would very much like to hear that. That's the perfect example of someone who I think could probably stick that landing.
Yeah, yeah. He's doing the superhero landing
because he's just so good. Yeah, he's just so good.
Yeah.
I was going to talk about one chapter. For the most part, it's just Ivan and Anna during predominantly throughout the book. There's a few other characters that come in from time to time, but there was one scene in particular where they're in a cafe, and it's 2 men and 4 women that I have to do. Now, as a dude, it's difficult to do a woman in general, particularly because then you have to get up in a higher range, and I have kind of a gravelly voice anyway, and you got to fight that the best you can, and speak in kind of another octave. But then if you got 4 people that are women and they all have to be different.
So that's why my ears were burning. You were pressing me left and right.
That is challenging. So 2 dudes, one dude is Ivan. I already have his voice down, and he's Russian. So I could do my own voice and it would be different. But I chose for the other guy, in my mind, I was doing Owen Wilson. In my mind, I'm doing Owen Wilson, but I think in introspection, looking back, I think I settled on Bill Clinton without the Southern accent. So I was trying kind of a Valley dude. So if you listen to it, think Owen Wilson, but also I think I kind of notched into Bill Clinton somehow.
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit. I can hear it now. Yeah. I was wondering where
without the Southern accent
came from. Yeah. Yeah.
And then for his girlfriend, I did basically Owen Wilson as a girl. And I think it was Emma Stone that I was trying with her. Okay. It doesn't sound anything like Emma Stone, but that was what was in my head.
It does go Owen Wilson as a girl, though. It does.
So anyway, she's a couple of octaves. She only has like 2 lines, so I went a couple of octaves up on her from Owen Wilson's voice, essentially.
What I loved was Amy.
And then, with her, I spoke a little slower and kind of in a sing-song type of pattern. And by the end of that thing, I could do her just as well as Anna. Mm-hmm. Like I had down pretty good, I felt. And then the 4th girl was actually a waitress, and so I just gave her Southern accent because it's like that's a lot easier. I'll just do a Southern accent that will differentiate her from that deal. But that's the sort of
Apparently,
things that you get into when you're doing audiobook narration, is trying to distinguish. Everyone's got to have a different voice.
and the other thing that really made me want you to read this book, is that some of the comedic elements in it. Anybody who knows me knows I have a very dry sense of humor, and the chapter that's just between Anna and Amy, you picked up on every single beat of my dry sense of humor because you know me, and you know my sense of humor. You've experienced it before.
Right.
So as I'm listening to the chapter and everything, I'm just dying with laughter because hearing it now, it was funny to me when I wrote it, but then actually hearing it was even funnier. And but I still think the best line was when Amy asks Anna if he's given her his Nabokanab, and you read it exactly like that, his Nabokanab, and I had to stop and walk away for a minute because I couldn't stop laughing.
There's a lot of humor in this book.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's between Anna and Amy.
Yep.
And some of it's between Ivan and Anna. And but yeah, there are some zingers in here. And it's fun to try to stick that landing, I think.
Oh, you did. You stuck it all right. You
because I knew when you were going for humor, and you had a lot of good lines. I don't want to spoil the lines. You had a lot of good lines in there, and so it was fun to try to nail those.
Amy is actually characterized after my friend Amy. In Arlington. She knows who she is.
Yeah.
And when I sent her that scene, she was like, "This is gold."
That's funny.
So yeah,
that's really funny. Let me give a little bit of my impression of the book as someone who's read it. You know what? Is it legal or ethical for me to leave a review of your book?
I don't see why not.
I mean,
you could always leave it under your pen name.
Well, to do that, I would have to do it. I mean, I don't know. I just heard from there was an author who did the narration for the new Red Sonja book, and that person is quoted in the blurb, talking about the book, and it's like, wait a minute, you did the narration for the book.
Well, if you did the narration, I mean, you're reading the book. I mean, you're actually reading the book as you're.
Oh yeah, I know it.
So I don't see
it very well.
I don't see why there's any. I mean, yes, I asked you.
I literally read the book multiple times because when you do this narration, it's not. It takes about 3 times longer to read it, and about 10 times longer to edit it.
Yeah.
Than the way it comes out. I think this book is a little over 2 hours, two and a half, maybe.
Yeah,
something
it's
like that.
A little under 200 pages.
So you can figure that it took about 7 or 8 hours for me to narrate it, and then 10 times that to do the editing on the thing. And you also have to realize that when you do these things, you can't just spend an afternoon doing it. My voice burns out after usually a chapter or two. I'm done. I can't do anymore. There's not enough tea or coffee in the world to get my voice to keep going.
So, when I do book signings, talking with readers and stuff, after about an hour and a half, 2 hours, my voice is shot.
Yeah, my voice will be shot after this podcast.
If it's loud in the room, it gets to the point where they can't hear me after a while.
Yeah. But let me say that there is a lot of humor in this, but it's also steamy. It has, and steamy, usually the catalyst for that is Russian literature that's, that is predominantly Ivan reading in a method to be seductive. so that if you're into that sort of thing, it's there. Also, the characters are very likable. I don't know if you could do anything else with the characters, but you've crafted very likable characters. I mean, you want these two to hit it off. Mm-hmm. And I also really liked Amy too. She was a great character and a great foil for Anna. It's a fun read. Yeah, it's a fun read.
I appreciate that. I really do.
And I really like the hook, which is that Russian literature. So someone who hasn't read a lot of Russian literature, it makes me interested. It's like it makes me want to pick. Like I wanted to pick up Lolita after this, mm-hmm. which I've wanted to pick up for a long time anyway, because Stanley Kubrick did a Lolita film. It's kind of a famous novel. Nabokov has a few lines in the latest Blade Runner movie, which made me want to pick up that. I think it's called Pale Fire. So I have an interest in Russian literature, and after reading this, literally reading it, and figuratively reading it, it makes you interested. It makes you want to go like, hey, maybe I should pick this up and read it, because it's really, I mean, the writing is very good. It's I mean, these things are, it's good stuff.
I had a lot of fun writing this one, and Ivan points out to Anna early in the book, stop thinking Lolita and Nabokov, because there's more to Russian literature than just that. And to a lot of people, that's all they've ever heard of, or all they've ever heard of is Crime and Punishment, or War and Peace, and some of the thick volumes that these Russian authors were good at writing. But there really is a lot of sensualism in Russian literature. There was a couple of books that I researched that I didn't use in there.
I'm sure.
I'm sitting there reading them, and I'm like, oh, this is good. Oh, this is really good. I mean, there's one called The Cossacks, which, I researched it, but I don't think I actually used it in this one. But it's a very good story of, about a gentleman who's a Cossack who goes back to his hometown and, falls in love with a young woman. And there's a lot of that in Russian literature. Russian literature, yes, it can be dark and dreary. Stop and think about the time period. A lot of this stuff was, it right. was a very dark time. I mean, we're talking pre-communist Russia here. We're talking Tsarist Russia. And quite a few of these books were written right around the Bolshevik uprising. See, I why do I know this stuff? Right. So between the time period it was written in and everything, it is kind of dark. But if you take that into context of the story and where a lot of these stories are placed in that time frame, and then read it, you'll realize, no, this really isn't as dark as it seems. This is what the state of the country was back then, just like we see in novels today. Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain, talking about how, what it was like back in the 1800s, and Huck Finn with the slavery and everything. I mean, when you look at these books in the time frame that they're placed, they're not as dark or as dreary as what they seem, and you can garner more enjoyment out of them when you expand your horizon on how you approach the books. And that was kind of also part of the reason why I wanted to use my love of Russian literature in this, is to kind of give people a better a little bit more understanding of what these books really were.
Yeah. I have the link to the book up here. I want to encourage people to get over there and read the book, or get the audiobook.
Please get the audiobook.
And leave a review.
Yes.
Leave a review.
Please. Leave a review.
I have discovered that reviews are the lifeblood.
Mm-hmm.
If you're an independent author, I mean, if you're whatever, Stephen King, you don't need any help on that. They have, for one thing, obviously there's a lot of people that are waiting for the next Stephen King book and all that sort of stuff. But if you have a publisher, they can rally the troops and make sure that there is a way to get, enough of, reviews that you're off to the races. But if you're an independent author, you live or die by the reviews.
Yep.
And the reason is, the more reviews you have, the more Amazon will push your book up in the ratings. So, when someone, like I said, you need to put Dirty Professor and Beth A Freely to make sure that she comes up. If you have 100 reviews, then that book's going to pop up, quicker.
And if you're not on Amazon, Goodreads is a great place to put reviews.
Sure.
Go to Barnes and Noble. All of my stuff's also on Barnes and Noble, Kobo.
There you go.
All of the major places. If you're not comfortable or you're anti-Amazon, please go put a review up somewhere else. Every review counts. Yeah,
for sure. We got to get that print version synced with the
I gotta
Kindle and the audiobook.
Gotta give him a call.
And by the way, look, Beth put the audiobook at a great price. So if you're used to getting audiobooks and having to hawk your car or do dishes at the local diner to be able to afford an audiobook, you're going to be pleasantly surprised by how much that you can get the audiobook for. Which is great. I actually didn't even discuss that with you, but I was going to suggest that you put it about where you put it.
Surprisingly enough, I don't set the rates for the audiobooks.
Really?
No, it's whatever. Okay. So for those of you who are wondering, I put my audiobooks out through ACX, which is part of Amazon. And I do that because audiobook narrators are not cheap. Okay. And ACX has a program where you can offer part of your Dirk, what's the word I'm looking for?
You can offer them a cut of the royalties.
Yeah, you split the royalties with your producer.
And way, Amazon or Audible takes a sizable, super sizable chunk.
They take a super
just for giving you the platform. Now, they do take care of payment processing, and they are super great at guiding people to your audiobook, and they're definitely worth that. There's no doubt about it.
Look, I don't mind.
They take a large cut.
They're the ones maintaining, as someone who does websites and stuff, I understand what a lot of the background is and where that money goes to. They're paying people to make sure that platform stays up and running all the time.
They're the 800-pound gorilla too.
They are. So, I don't mind you giving them the sizable chunk. But they, ACX is designed for people like us, indie authors who don't have the funds up front to pay a narrator to do this. They've made it so that, we can get our books out there in audio form for people to enjoy. It goes on Audible, it goes on Apple, and it goes on iTunes. So it's hitting the three major platforms. If you're looking for a place for audiobooks and with good narrators, I do highly recommend ACX. I have been very happy with them. They also give you codes.
As have I. Speaking from the other end, I make a little bit of money off of the books that I read previously.
Yeah. I think the highest.
Still,
I
and
think
that was
the
years
highest,
ago.
and you're probably still getting royalties from them
Yeah.
every time somebody buys a book. Yeah.
Except for one of the books, the author paid me outright. It was a nice little payday. This was a guy who had some money, and he said, "I just want to pay you outright," and he made it a deal I couldn't refuse.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was as a narrator, it was nice to do it and be done. But it's also nice to get the residuals,
and
every month.
I would love the residuals to be more, but I take what I get and I just keep on rolling. And
you never know on these things.
Yeah, exactly. All is ever going to take is the right person at the right time to either hear your audiobook or to pick up your book and say, "Hey, let's talk." I'm actually a step closer to potentially maybe one day seeing Behind the Acid Dorian Gray as a movie, simply because of the cover model that I chose, who is an actor as well as a cover model. Maybe one day we can get that option.
Yeah.
But for those
the call from Netflix.
Yeah, I'll take it. If Netflix wants to do, if Netflix wants to do it, man, I'll talk to them. I'm not going to say no. I'm going to say, tell me what you're offering. Let's see what you've got.
I tell my buddy who wrote Bad Candy, all it takes is one of these, executives from Netflix that just happens to be going to a comic convention and is picking up potential properties to pick up a copy and love the idea and go, hey, this would make a great movie. Yeah. And, your whole life could change in seconds.
Yeah, which leads me to make the comment to all of you indie authors out there: don't give up. Don't give up. You may be getting $5-10 a month right now on royalties. In a few years, you may be getting $500 or $600 a month or more.
Well, it goes back to that 20 to 50K.
Yep.
If one of your books hits, then people are going to go back and find the rest of your catalog. Yeah. And all you're doing is writing to get to that one book, and then the rest pays off. That's the deal. That hopefully by the time that you write 20 books, you're going to write at least one that's really going to connect with the crowd, and then those other books are going to keep you in business until you write the next book.
I mean, look, 20 years ago when I started this, I never would have dreamed that my first audiobook out the door would be read by a bona fide BBC actor.
Yeah.
And I
that's cool as hell.
Max is one of the coolest people I've ever met, and he was just looking, he was looking to break into audiobook narration and loved Dorian Gray. And, so, don't
that was
give
a
up.
COVID read, wasn't it? He was just looking for something to do while he was locked in, right?
Read. Yep.
That's a great vocation because you do it. I mean, it's even better if no one's around.
Yeah.
So that worked out quite well for both you and him.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
I have a sample of the book. Do you want me to play it, or do you want to send?
Go for it. No,
the deal?
No. Put a sample up. Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
We can talk during the sample, by the way.
Let's give him a little tease.
Do you want me to play the whole sample or just about a minute of it?
Oh, it's up to you.
Again, we can talk during it. All right, here we go. You fucking jerk. You took my time slot. Dr. Ivan Petrov looked up from his laptop, his fingers stilling over the keyboard. He stared at the woman standing in his office doorway, her red button-down shirt hanging untucked over her blue jeans. He loved that color on her. It set off her amber eyes and gave her pale complexion a flush. He rested his chin on his fist, a devious smile crossing his lips. "Whatever are you talking about, Dushinka?" he asked, his voice still tinged with his native Russian accent. Anna Cassadine stared at him and shook her head, laughing as she stepped into the room. "Oh, no, you don't, Ivan. You are not going to get away with calling me sweetheart. I'm pissed at you. You took my time slot. I've had that time slot for 5 years, and here you come, swooping in and snatching it up for your Russian literature class." Ivan stood up and walked around his desk. He closed the door after gently tugging her in the room.
And knew exactly how I wrote it.
I have students who can't fit the class into their schedule with the current time slot, and they need the credit. They are seniors. Do you want them to wait to graduate? No one else could swap the class except you. He grinned down at her, standing in her personal space. So, the scheduling director swapped us out. I told her you wouldn't mind. Damn it, Ivan. I mind. I do mind. I mind greatly. She punched his chest. Back up. She laughed. He had a way of invading her personal space and making her warm. So anyway, there's a little bit of that.
We'll set the tone right off the bat for the relationship between Anna and Ivan. Right off the bat.
Which is fun. Those two play off of each other quite well. I had forgotten one thing about Ivan that I did a little bit throughout this thing, which if you hear it, if I say it, you might hear it at times, particularly when he's reading Russian literature. I realized that the accent that I was doing and the way I was doing it is very similar to the way that I cannot remember his name.
Walter Koenig?
No, but that's funny too. The guy who played Dracula in the Francis Ford Coppola Dracula.
Was it Gary Oldman?
Gary Oldman.
Oh, yeah.
So Gary Oldman has a certain way that he speaks throughout that deal, which is not Russian, but it's Eastern European, it's Transylvania. And there are times when he inhabited me as well, particularly when, like I said, Ivan is trying to read Russian literature, and I wanted emphasis on stuff. Gary Oldman was very, very specific about the way that he delivered his lines, and I heard him in the back of my head during some of this stuff when Ivan was being very serious or very pointed, and I delivered some of those lines kind of with that
Gary Oldman
emphasis.
style.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yep. So anyway, if you want to hear the full preview, then you can go to Audible and they'll give you, I think, 5 minutes of the first of it. Or you could get it. Let's be honest. It's not going to put anyone in the poorhouse to get this thing. If you're even vaguely interested, it's definitely worth it to go out there and pick it up for the few dollars that it is. And if you read either the ebook or the print book or listen to the audiobook, for God's sakes, please go over and leave a review for her or for us, because the lifeblood of an author, an independent author, it's those reviews. I mean, it just makes such a huge difference, because people, not only does it help with the algorithm, but it also helps people that are just going there and they're like, I don't know what to think about this book. Yeah. Someone who gives an honest review is going to tell people kind of what to expect with the book. And, I think that they will like it. And so I want them to leave a review.
Plus, if you leave a review for Dirk on Audible or iTunes or Apple, that helps him, secure additional.
Oh, it's huge.
Narrating jobs, which
it's even bigger on there.
Yeah.
For the narrator, because people will be like, oh, well, I want him to. Hopefully, people don't just come at me with characters with Russian accents. I would love to do science fiction or fantasy or something like that. That would be awesome.
Well, I'll remember that because
Since I like that so much.
I got a whole
since that's
second
really-
series coming out. A whole second sci-fi series coming out. So
Good.
that's
Well,
yours.
That goes
right to you.
that goes right into my next question,
Yep.
which is, what do you have coming up next? What's coming up?
What do I have coming up next? So I'm currently working on a short story, my first vampire story. Finally getting my vampires done.
I like that.
I'm doing a short story for a charity anthology to help the shelters in Tennessee and the Carolinas that got hit. 750-year-old nerdy vampire goes in to the shelter and adopts 2 bearded dragons. I'm just going to leave it at that for now. And then that's going to be followed by my first paranormal motorcycle club story, which is also going in an anthology.
Very interesting.
It's the motorcycle club's all female, and my motorcycle club is they're all female vampires, known as the Crimson Valkyrie.
Wait a minute! I think I saw the cover for this book.
You saw the yeah. I showed you.
Is that done?
The cover or the story?
Is the book done?
No. The cover that you saw, that's the anthology cover. Yeah.
I mean, they already have it though.
Yeah. We release it at the end of the year.
Okay, it's a good cover.
Yeah, that's getting released.
I was wondering what that was about.
Yeah.
So it's female
motorcycle club. Yep.
Ooh, if they come out with a sequel to that, I'd love to write a story for that.
Well, here's the funny thing. After the 6 months is up, I'm actually with another author friend of mine. She's actually Stephanie Swan is her name. She does covers for me. She did the cover for Taming the Rancher's Daughter, and she did the cover for the 20th anniversary of Behind the Eyes of Dorian Gray for me. Her and I are starting a site called the Dopamine Funhouse, and we will be offering shared world series similar to what I was doing with Ashley. Same kind of concept, and we are going to expand on the Crimson Valkyrie motorcycle club and try and make it into a series. And we were talking about actually offering, anybody who would like to write in the series with us, just let me know and we'll figure it out. So when we get that up, I'll let you know for sure, Dirk.
Yeah, cool.
So that's what I have to finish off this year. And then the Texas Heat series, I have 2 books in the Texas Heat series that come out, I think, in January. And then the Texas Night series is August of next year. And then there's another shared world somewhere in between there. So that's the shared world series that I'm working on. But in between all of that, I am reformatting and re-editing The Legend of Captain St. Pierre in celebration of the 10th anniversary release on that book, which will include a new cover. And then the second St. Pierre book, which is called The Will of Captain St. Pierre, I'm hoping to have out next year. It is 3/4 of the way done. And then the second book to the Prophecies of Fate series, Legend of Captain St. Pierre, I have that coming out hopefully next year. And then book 2 of my New Mexico Night series, which is called McShane's Mountain, sometime next year. And then the first of my Hampton Brothers of Red Lodge trilogy is coming out next year. So you got a little sci-fi, a little historical fiction, a little paranormal, and a nice chunk of cowboy.
That's awesome. I love how busy you are.
Moving out here has really inspired a lot of stuff. And after doing 7 full book signings plus a bunch of little shows all around town this year, I'm only doing 2 shows next year, maybe 3. But I did get an invitation to Wild Deadwood Reads, which I'm jumping on because that's one of the big shows. And
where is that?
That's in Deadwood, South Dakota.
Okay.
So I hit Montana this year. Next year I'm hitting South Dakota. And then I'm doing Love and Devotion, which this year for 2025 is a 2-day show in Burbank, and
Okay.
I will be hosting a readers lunch on the Friday of that show.
Cool.
Both of those are in June. They're back to back. So I already warned my husband I'll be gone for 2 weeks.
Wow, 2 weeks.
But yeah, because Wild Deadwood is like June 15th, and then Love and Devotion is June 21st and June 22nd. So
you mentioned something about something called Book Fest.
The Book Fest, yes.
Tell us about that.
The Book Fest was started by Desiree Duffy, and it's a hi peanut butter. It's a biannual, twice a year book contest that ranges all genres, from children's stories to nonfiction. This year they opened it up also to audiobooks and covers and stuff like that. And it is a well-run book contest. It is a very good organization to be involved within. Black Chateau is part of it. That's Desiree's company. And it's twice a year we do as a Book Fest bellwether. I get to be part of the judging. I actually had an article put in the magazine that we put out for the Book Fest, cool, twice a year. I got my first article in there this time. We do panels, different podcast panels. I've been the moderator of 2 different panels. I did one. I actually did an interview with Doug Kari, who wrote the Berman Murders, talking about the murder of I want to say his name. His first name was Benny. That doesn't sound right, but he was the heir to the Kahlua fortune.
Wow.
And him and his wife were killed in California. And it was a big mystery. So he wrote this investigative nonfiction book, which I highly recommend. It's an excellent read. But I got to do an interview with him with the Book Fest. This last one we did, I ran a panel on world building. And then I was part of a panel talking about the different things, for authors, why in my part of the panel was why an author's website is important. They offer a lot of information for both readers and writers. It's a 2-day thing. It's one of the best book contests out there. It's well recognized. I've actually have a couple of author friends who entered their books in the contest and have won as well.
Wow.
So, I love what they stand for. I love what they're doing. And I'm really proud to be part of the Book Fest organization and the contest, twice a year.
Yeah. Very cool. As far as what I've got coming up next, I've got a book to publish. Yes, I'm sitting on it right now. So as soon as I get that, I will be busy before, during, and after publishing that, because there's a whole ramp up, and I try to get, people to help me with promoting it. And then I'll be going on some podcasts to promote the thing, and then, doing as much as I can to support the thing after that. And then, like I said, depending on kind of what happens with that, will determine kind of where my next book comes from. And I if I could just stop doing everything else, I could literally, I have 1 trillion books that I'm, I gave you 2 of them plus the 2 erotic books. So there's 4 books that I could do, but I have another 20 besides that I'm ready to do.
Oh yeah.
I just need the time to do them. And it takes me a while to do. to do books.
It doesn't help that I ask you to read another one of mine.
Right. Well, right. I have that. And here's something that you don't know. I have another book that I'm doing in between those two.
Oh, I love it.
So I haven't done it in 4 or 5 years. And then I had another author approach me to read an erotic novel, and I'm right in the middle of doing that as well.
Perfect.
So
perfect.
I'm going to have 3 audiobooks out,
Yes. See,
in quick succession. So
and plus
anyway.
we're talking about keeping this up and going. So yeah, you guys are going to see a lot of Dirk and I.
There's plenty to talk about. That's for sure.
Oh yeah.
For sure. Yeah. So you mentioned that. I want to say that, again, hopefully wherever it is that you're listening or watching this, if you're an author and you have a subject or you just want to talk about your own projects or whatever, get in touch with us. We're going to be looking for people to do interviews with, and we're going to be looking for people to do panels with. Yep. And, if you're someone who doesn't want to be on here but would like for us to cover a subject, we each have our own opinions on how to approach things. And I love talking process, sharing that with people and talking about what I'm doing. The last book that I wrote, I could talk about this for forever. I transcribed the thing to begin with, and that was a huge disaster for me. And so I can talk a lot about transcribe because I tried it I did it about 5 different ways. And then what I discovered is that when I just sat down and write it out, it's 10 times faster and about 100 times better as far as as editing it, because I don't care what transcription software or what method you're using, it ain't 100%. And so, you will go back. If like me, I do the whole thing and then I go back. Some of the stuff I'm like, what did I mean here? What does this mean? I had to translate my own transcription,
Or you wind up,
it's like it was written by another person.
Or you wind up suddenly with Red Hot Chili Pepper lyrics in the middle of your story, right. Like I did that day.
Exactly. It's different. That's another great subject, though, because some people, I've heard from some people that say I transcribe everything, and I love it, and it is faster. It's just the downside on the other end was too much for me.
The editing part.
The editing was a nightmare for me. Yeah, it wasn't so great. All right, let's plug our stuff, and then we'll wrap this up today. Sounds so, Beth, tell us how we can find you, please.
You can find me at brand new email.
None of this may be correct. This is stuff from
all of this
2 years ago. Okay,
still correct. Although I don't think I have my Patreon anymore. I don't know.
We will revise
go to my link tree. Easiest thing, go to my link tree, Beth A Freely. I am on most social media as Beth A Freely. Or you can contact me via my website, bethannfreely.com, BETHANNEFREELY, or at my business website, themusesfunhouse.com. That's pretty much where I'm at.
It's important I think you've mentioned it, but let's put a fine point on it. You do editing for people.
I do editing for other authors. So if you were looking for an editor that does everything from, nuts to bolts, I'm your person. I will edit your book with a critical but kind eye. None of us like the nasty criticism or being told that we have to change our stories just to fit a specific mold. I will not do that to you. Your story is yours. I will read it. I will tell you where I think you need to fix your plot. If there's a plot hole, I will tell you where I think you need some more detail or where you need to take some away. But I will never tell you to change your story from what it is. So if you're looking for a compassionate editor, please reach out to me. I have, pretty decent rates, and I will work payment plans. Also, if you're an author looking for a website, I do offer hosting and website building. I can build you an author website and host it for you. So please reach out to me. More than willing to talk to you and see what you got going on.
Yeah. And go to the Muses Funhouse for that, correct?
Yes, go to the Muses Funhouse for that.
Look, folks, she's very reasonable, and she's got a degree in doing this stuff, and she has over 20 years of experience doing this sort of stuff, and also experience on both sides of being a self-published author and being an author who had a publisher. So you're going to get a lot of experience for a very reasonable price there. Right?
And don't forget to plug you.
Okay.
There we go.
There's my stuff. I have Writeworks at dirkhooper.com. Also, if you're interested in my erotic novel, it's called Dominatrix Boss, and I will show that, and you can link to it here in a moment. But you can also see my website for that, which is under asherlake.net. And finally, if you're interested in marketing, branding, social media management, SEO, or a host of other things, you can check it out on sexynetworking.com. I do all of that there. Plus, I do cover art, I do cover design, and I do layouts for books as well. I have learned how to do layouts for books. Let me also plug my my book here.
And just so everybody knows, Dirk also works with me on the Muses Funhouse.
Yes, I offer specific things through the Muses Funhouse as well. And let's see, let me get this thing up here. There it is.
There you go.
There's my book, Dominatrix Boss by Asher Lake. It's done quite well, folks. It's done okay.
One of my favorite one of the favorite novellas happens to be Memoirs of the Pomsky. They see the cover you did for me, and they're like, "I want this book."
I did the good. Yeah, I did the artwork on that and the design for that book. And let's see. One last time, I want to make sure that we put up "Dirty Professor" by Beth A Freely, and I want to put where to get that, and then again, if you're just going to go to Amazon or anywhere and look for this, then make sure you put in Beth A Freely when you're doing the search for that. And you could also, of course, you could go get the audiobook too if you want to hear me speak in a fake Russian accent. Which was a lot of fun.
I could tell you had fun doing it.
Yeah, it was actually a blast. It was a blast. And it would not have been a blast if I didn't enjoy the book. So here's my final time of saying, go pick up that book. That's what I got. What else do you want to say there, Beth?
I'm pretty good. Come check us out, and we'll see you on the next book crew.
We certainly will. So for Beth, my name is Dirk. And until next time, dream hard.